All right. Story time, huh? Story time. Wow, I don't know. I'm going to do my best. Um, well, when I was a kid, um, we grew up in North Carolina, but we moved out to California when I was 6 years old. And I was in first grade, and and we moved into my cousin's house, the Smarts, and we lived at the Smarts house for about 2 weeks, maybe even a month, because you're when you're six, time flies by, waiting for the new house that we were going to move into to be ready. It was a brand new house. It was built in a tract of homes in a little town out in California called Clovis, California, and the builder's name was Bonadelli, John Bonadelli, and so they called them Bonadelli Homes, and they were brand new. I think my dad paid like $9,500 for it in 1960 or 60, about 1960. Anyway, when we finally moved into that house, we moved in there, and here's this great big huge tract of houses, and there's nothing else there, not for miles in any direction. I mean, just empty fields everywhere you look. And now this is in Central California. So in Central California, everything that there is agriculture. They grow every kind of crop that you can possibly imagine, and it's just unbelievable. And they have like these irrigation canals that go everywhere, and they have these dams that are up in the mountains, and they hold back the water when the snow melts from the Sierra Nevadas, and then they slowly release it, and they make electricity from the dams, and then what they do is they use the water to irrigate all the crops that they grow there. So it's pretty neat. Anyway, we're living the third house from the corner, and then there's a street there called Barstow. And on the other side of the street, there's nothing you could walk for a half hour and you never see anything except dirt and jackrabbits and some canals. And it was really, really neat. Anyway, I had two older brothers. One was 6 years older than me, and one was 4 years older. The oldest was named Ed or Edward, and the second one's name is Gene or Eugene. Anyway, everywhere we'd go out in those fields and we'd chase jackrabbits, and we'd shoot bows and arrows at them and throw rocks at them, and we'd go out there and build rafts and float down the canals and that kind of stuff. And it was really, really neat. And as these tract homes get bigger and bigger and bigger, next thing you know, there's a whole gang of people that are moving in, and there's all kinds of people and all kinds of guys. But unfortunately, there were no guys my age. Everybody was Gene and Edward's age, not my age. So here's a whole bunch of guys there, and they're I don't know. Let me think. I'm like 6 and 7 and 8 as we're growing a little bit older, and Edward's like 14 or 15, and Gene's like 12 and 13. So anyway, like any good little brother, he's wanting to tag along and hang around with his brothers and go everywhere they go. And if you went in this one direction, kind of catty corner, and you could follow the ditch along the way, about 3 miles up the way, there was actually a park there, and you got closer to the town of Clovis, California, which is where we lived. And so we would go over, and to that park and try and play football and try and play basketball and try and play baseball and just do all kinds of stuff there all the time. But, my brothers didn't want me to go because, all their buddies were their age, and their buddies would give them a bad time about bringing, the baby along with them all the time, or, that kind of thing. So anyway, they would, when I was young, what they would try and do is they'd take off running, and they would just run really fast and leave me in the dust and say, too bad. Uh, so I didn't get to go with them. But as I got older and I could run a little faster, I could kind of catch up with them. So they had these old plants that were growing out in the fields there, and they were called gourds, okay? And like a little tiny melon, okay? Only not, but I don't think it was edible. But anyway, they would hit me with those gourds until I started crying, and then I would go home. That way I didn't end up tagging along with them. Now, part of the reason is because I'd always want to play the sports And it's no fun having a guy that much younger than you playing the games with him. But the other part was they would smoke cigarettes and I would tell mom. And they would cuss and I would tell mom. So they definitely did not want me there because they knew they were going to get whipped that night when Dad came home, for cussing and for smoking cigarettes. Anyway, time would go by and I got a little bigger and a little tougher, and pretty soon those gourds didn't hurt quite so bad. So they started using dirt clods, and they would pelt me with dirt clods. And if that didn't work, there were these walnut trees that grew kind of along the field there, along the canal. And there'd be all these old walnuts laying on the ground. And they'd pick those walnuts up and hit you with them, man. And I'm telling you, they would put a knot on your head like you cannot believe, okay? I mean, it hurt, and it hurt bad, okay? So, damn. Anyway, time went on, and I think Edward got to be probably about 16. I was probably about 10. Gene was probably about 14. And, by then they'd toughened me up pretty good, and I was one tough 10-year-old hanging around with, like 10 or 15 or 20 guys that are that age. Anyway, what they progressed into was BB guns. And if I tried to follow them, they'd shoot me with BB guns, okay? So, damn, man, those things would sting and leave a welt on your butt like you couldn't believe, or on your back. And anyway, I used to wear this black leather coat with me. And I'd wear this black leather coat. I don't care if it was in the summertime, okay? Because it would keep them BBs from hurting me too bad. And I got some fishing goggles, and I put the fishing goggles on. And I swear to God, this sounds crazy, but it's a true story. I put fishing goggles on, like the underwater mask that you wear. And that way, in case I got hit in the face, it wouldn't get me, So anyway, I'm following, and I'm trying to sneak so they don't see me. So I'm hiding behind the bushes and hiding behind the bushes and hiding behind the bushes. And as I get closer and closer to the park, I'm going, all right, man, I'm going to finally make it there, and everything's going to be okay. And all of a sudden, they all jumped up and yelled, ambush, ambush. And there's like 10 of them, and they're shooting me with BB guns, Anyway, when I lifted my head up above the bush, a BB hit me right in the center of the glasses there, of the goggles, and it went just barely inside. Thank God it didn't, put glass in my eye or anything like that, but it went just inside. And I'm sitting there, and every time I would move my head, this BB inside the goggles would roll back and forth. And I'm sitting there going, and this BB just keeps rolling back and forth. And all these guys, they're laughing and laughing. Every time that BB would roll, they would laugh even harder. And I mean, they were laughing so hard they were falling down on the ground, okay? And believe it or not, it got them laughing so hard, and they thought it was so funny, and they thought it was so cool, that from that day forth, they accepted me as one of them, and they never were mean to me ever again. Now, I swear to you, that's a true story. Shot me, hit me right between the eyes, right in the middle of that fishing goggle thing. The glass didn't completely shatter, but it broke a little bit and a little hole in it. And that one little BB went down inside, and it would just roll around every time I would move my head, and they laughed, and they laughed, and they laughed, and they laughed, And that turned out to be like one of the best summers I ever had in my whole life. And they took me over there, and because they're all older and they're all nicer, they taught me how to hit a baseball really good, how to throw a football really good, how to shoot a basketball really good, And they ended up being my lifelong friends, And to this very day, there's a whole bunch of them that I still talk to every couple of days or every month. And, they're just really, really great people, and they're lifelong friends. Can you imagine having friends since 1960? You've known them, and they were your neighbors, and they were your buddies, and I have like 10 friends like that, And they taught me, don't be a liar, don't be a thief, don't take no crap off nobody. Better to get your butt kicked than get bullied. I mean, they taught me a lot of really good lessons in life, And it was really, really neat. And I was blessed with the wonderful people that moved into that neighborhood and ended up helping raise me, And anyway, so that's what it was like growing up in the 60s. And I'm going to tell you. So Anyway, that's a true story. And man, we used to float rafts down those canals, and man, we'd float the rafts down the canals, and then you couldn't pull them back because they weighed too much. So we'd just let the raft go, and then we'd run for like 2 hours to get home. And we'd go over there and go fishing, and like I said, we'd hunt them jackrabbits with bows and arrows. And I remember one time we shot this one jackrabbit with a bow, and the arrow went into it, and it's halfway through and halfway not through. And this jackrabbit just runs off with our arrow. And that arrow cost like 80 cents, you know what I mean? Oh, man, we lost an arrow. Oh, God. Anyway, you get the drift. But it was really cool growing up like that and having friends like that.
You stupid chicken, get the
So-
hell out of the way.
I hope you like the story. And like I said, it's a true story about when I was a kid. And I hope every time you look at me, and you see me move my head, you just imagine that little BB rolling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because that's the true story. Yahoo!
Yahoo!